Republic of India, Islamic Republic of Pakistan wants to eliminate their nuclear arsenals, Carl can 18 security climates in South Asia, only solution to completely abolishing nuclear weapons, disarm solely, like waiting for non-use of nuclear arms, critical, but the death, all about China, non-discriminating nuclear chain regime, central establishment, nuclear conflicts, fully measured arms control commission, be encouraged, impact war escalates and goes nuclear, only elimination of arsenal strikes, first preemptive counterforce, strike India would do despite a view of Pakistan considers it too free to use or lose pressure, shrinking act, 1980 defense minister what it needs to hear to energy with the future defense one, circumstances India's counterforce capability to get the option to target Pakistan's nuclear force, India's ability to accurate missiles in larger numbers, going to improve the capability to monitor Pakistan's nuclear force, and the ability to wait temptation to short Pakistan's arsenal one cell, to avoid preemptive strike, again, arguing greater flex nuclear weapon with India, Pakistan, more than go. Massive second Kashmir long-range intensive skirmishes and rapid escalation of conventional conflicts. That's Wakar 19. India, Pakistan are long-running incendiaries who causing confrontational conflict night nuclear war investigators identify the subcontinent's world likely to nuclear power when two countries came to the list in the close of world's nuclear war skirmish or conflict. Nuclear war incidents, conventional military conflicts, maybe asking the possibility of nuclear exchange made through a war depression. Response constantly any further escalation on the leaders control no nuclear control political will solve Kashmir seems unlikely to solve better retaliate turn to de-escalating the conflict. Third, terrorism, major retaliatory strikes, hardline nationalism, and Pakistan's inability to counter the Indian army making nuclear escalation and the EU. 18, attack by justification of India's nationalism and pressure on Indian military continued retaliatory attacks targeting only terrorist details of Pakistani military facilities. Escalation terror attacks made the situation perilous. Delhi for the launch major retaliatory attacks against targets of Pakistan trying to terrorist justice in Indian military. The Indian army short attacks Indian army to protect region dangerous force. Pakistan military not continue to downplay any attacks in Indian trouble which Pakistan military retaliating for. Pakistan nuclear counter superior Indian special forces control the battlefield nuclear weapons will massively retaliate. Fourth, aggression. UN battles and uncertainty, arms races, and international actors can't checkmate Donald. 19 suicide covering India retaliates this week airstrike keeping Pakistan's first week aircraft winning from power against another uncharted waters when country preoccupied is crisis might soon new and unpredictable elements willing to phrase the states and the ability of Western countries to intervene. Equal and disappeared ready to decide the great strategic state no longer tolerant attack Pakistan no longer assume Martha striking any retaliation US left credibility allowed and pretty crazy China believe in a form of British consumer directly US seeking Pakistan support peace with the top and living explosive repression and solver Pakistan will help me battle the nuclear missiles development those stressful use of nuclear weapons. Pakistan government struggling to stabilize the economy. Fifth, Pakistani officials Article 370 conference need deep establishment ships prove nuclear escalations like these. Pending 19 Pakistani ambassadors have Pakistan retaliating with new technical international support position on Article 370 Pakistan established the nuclear war. If the people of thermos they are Pakistan determines covering them nuclear posts like while they help believe the countries establish an existing advocate good ties with the British the favor of nuclear wars where some countries represent the moderate version of Pakistani nationalism. Pakistani establishment views itself at a loss. Sixth, perception. Pakistani believe that India will first strike in Indian overconfidence triggers escalations declaring 19. Modi declared India was preparing to launch a spectrum missile straight south of shut up nuclear India led Pakistan to use force terrorists to kill 10,000 Indian civilians. Pakistan after this ability willing to go up to the battlefield restricting India's superior forces. India attacks the radar imagery and target much of Pakistan with lands to increase missiles. India's unlikely capabilities on Pakistan the radio in such a capability is likely to accelerate arms with possibilities to strike nuclear Pakistan like consider to strike India approximately the execute power strike cannot. 7. Nuclear submarines, strategic ambiguity, weak communication, devolution, plan to exponentially increase the risk of miscalc and accidents. Tell me 18. Pakistan's decision on nuclear weapons use Navy's direct response to any nuclear tragedy. Nuclear submarines increase the risk of war control by jittering paranoid officers. Pakistan test fire submarine launch nuclear warfare. If we use the sea, we can sustain a advantage the risk of accidental nuclear wars increase exponentially. At sea wars and missiles have already been some communication of warning submarines on so no possible to detect nuclear submarines if it can be able to survive a nuclear strike and launch a devastating second strike. Once the first nuclear launch would be impossible at the time to de-escalate each side to demolition leads to its entire arsenal and population centers. Nuclear war between India and Pakistan destroys the world. Johnson 19. Nuclear explosion from sizable areas 36 million tons to 130% on 5 degrees globally, increasing by 30% globally. Even China presentation dropped to 0 United States 250%. India, Pakistan after 125 million fatalities suffered from planet last century. It's mass starvation, extinction, nuclear fallout creates ice age and mass starvation. Star 15 war with nuclear weapons to be mass extinction, extinction, and then utter finality for it used to be too cold, darker, free radioactive fallout before the biosphere million tons to smoke destroy ocean blocks, unlike creating ice age for decades. Virtually any nuclear will leave the Earth essentially uninhabitable. Even limited nuclear war immediately kills hundreds of millions in 1 week. That's 2 in all 19. Even one nuclear weapon explosion do a great deal of damage. 15 kills an average, 3 kills 700,000, 100 kills an average, 2 million fatalities. Advanced population war with 15 killer weapons, city fatalities, war with 2 war with 100 kills on one strike, lethal 2.5 times as many fatalities occur in a single week. 8. Nuclear terror, high probability of nuclear terrorism in Pakistan, past attacks and insider help prove that Shapu 17 catastrophic acquisition of nuclear weapon by terrorist organizations with active help of rogue insiders attacked by Pakistani Navy officers. 4 persons were associated with former Pakistan Navy division, the Dark business and Navy harboring extreme seas with by senior officers appreciate onboard station offer deploying AKs within the South European as well for serving commanders were arrested trying to flee. There was larger time after offering the Pakistani Navy's commanders to be more operating with the Pakistan's army and air force crisis with India few insiders to be taxed to transfer tactical weapons to the front line and terrorism with danger of full threat to Pakistan's nuclear arsenal. Indian nuclear terrorism is possible to previous thefts and low security law, even in an attempt to escalate its taken 16. India is susceptible to terrorist attack a nuclear facility or the theft of nuclear materials created while IS expressed nature large lack of terrorism weapons mass destruction in South Asia is acceptably vulnerable to terrorist attack on a nuclear facility. BRC Mumbai houses India's weapons creation when attack on BRC constitute aggression like 2008 crisis escalated rather the terrorist suspect in action with Mumbai training bodies best proven by SC other comments of BRC in the order militant attack to the BRC to continue Mumbai terror attacks include response to BRC media reports different incidents of solar uranium 9498 to 2008. NFU fails first. India considers preemptive strikes as defense. That's Fisher 17. India is considering preemptive strikes as defensive would make a nuclear exchange more unavoidable thankful signs of strategic adjustment are mounting. 2. Officials would go back on it. In India, implied it's only for signaling clarity. 19. He was signaling India's no NFUs, neither absolutely nor permanent conflict, nothing to compel India to abide by. The most official signaling give what something India might use first. 3. NFUs meaningless to Pakistan. They never believed it. Clarity. 19. Pakistan trust. They never believed India anyway. The growing Indian capabilities had an interest making warnings and using for India can nuclear arms on the table according to fact acting to this chain arms races. Our study is best for nuclear winter. Rise under all is garbage. That's student all. 19. Firestorms occur when criteria met 2 criteria not meant to fuel. It's too small. Generate firestorm. Rise under high target location or fuel. It's burning golf course. Looks nothing like it is India or Pakistan. Fuel values 110 times smaller than the top 50 targets in India and Pakistan. The simulation is clearly not a worst case. Neither compared with previous studies nor listed basic parameters. The results could not be duplicated. Rise under shows several parameters that suppress vertical development, including stable boundary layer, dry material, short simulation time. There's no evidence for that assumption. The plain volcanic eruptions support the results of the erroneous TMAC model. Sulfate aerosols. This process represents completely different physics than black carbon. They do not simulate firestorms in densely populated urban areas and how to make they do not reproduce historic firestorms. First strike fails underground storage spread out base and decoy facility. Boss empty. Pakistan working safe harbors nuclear capability. Pakistan safe and construction search by building underground nuclear facilities targeting any army center where there's nuclear credit answer how many nuclear races there are in Pakistan. Some facilities can use to deceive enemy countries. Also in that part.
How does Indian possession of nuclear weapons lead to nuclear terrorism?
Our evidence indicates that there have been multiple plots and attempts at attack on them previous times when there have been tensions running between them.
The evidence says that there have been confirmed incidents of stolen uranium in the past. Why did that not lead to a nuclear terrorist attack?
Where does it say that?
It says media reports confirmed incidents of stolen uranium in 1994, 98, and 2001.
They weren't able to convert it then. They didn't have the same know-how as they currently do.
What does your evidence say they now have the know-how and infrastructure?
That was obviously like 20 years ago. It indicates
what does your evidence say that there's been a change in technology or the materials that terrorists have that facilitate an attack?
I think it's a pretty reasonable argument that it's making a claim that like just because that didn't happen 20 years ago doesn't mean it's not going to happen now.
Why does Kashmir lead to nuclear war?
It creates escalation of conventional conflicts, long-running tensions. Our McDonald evidence gives the example of last March, I think, was the first time that India used airstrikes.
Kashmir's special status was revoked. Military officers were moved into Kashmir, etc. Why is that not triggering a conflict?
Argument is that it will soon trigger conflict.
What has been sort of preventing India and Pakistan from engaging in one now, despite tensions being incredibly high, is I guess the question.
So soon one side is going to inevitably do something that provokes the other side to the extent that it causes a larger conventional war that will cross the nuclear threshold.
Yeah, so
our whole argument is that nobody knows exactly where that nuclear threshold is. That uncertainty is why it's so likely to escalate.
Okay, I guess what causes India to counterforce strike, or I guess what is a counterforce strike?
A counterforce strike is a nuclear strike on the other country's nukes that attempts to preemptively eliminate their nuclear.
Is that the only reason why India would first strike Pakistan?
I mean, potentially Modi could just be like, we hate Pakistan, we're gonna first strike you, but that's probably the main reason they think they want to first strike.
Okay, that's the main. Is there a reason why Pakistan would first strike India, absent threats of counterforce?
Yeah, so I can find the name of the evidence, but multiple pieces of our evidence discuss development of tactical nuclear weapons, which results in pre-delegation to battlefield commanders who are more likely to use nukes on the battlefield, which would trigger massive Indian retaliation. Our evidence also talks about nuclear submarines, which could easily result in accidental nuclear.
Why do nuclear submarines increase the risk of miscalculation?
Pakistan's communication with these submarines, their technology is just garbage, so the people on these submarines are on their own. So if they don't really know what's happening above them, they're more likely to like use nukes first.
Does India have submarines too?
I believe so.
Okay. Why does India consider preemptive strikes as defense?
I don't know why they think that anything Pakistan's doing, or they think that it would be in response to something Pakistan's doing to them in a conventional war, so it would just be response to that.
So the argument is that like India first striking would be perceived as a response to like a conventional.
Well, that's what India claims. Like obviously that's ludicrous, but that's what they're establishing.
So what is the implication for this evidence then?
They consider it not violating NFU.
Alright, 50. It's fourth in case.
50.
Yeah. It's fine. Wait, actually, make a little more. Alright, that's 30 more.
So 120.
It is a stand. It's actually 5 inches. Do you have a stand?
Yes. Said 5.
Yeah.
I've not received it yet.
I just download it. Good. Cool. Is everyone else good?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Counterpoint text, Pakistan to eliminate the nuclear arsenal, solves conflict without nuclear weapons. There's been for India to counter for strike, which also slashes the risk of Pakistan for strike. Challenge 19 that India Pakistan is the risk of escalation. Get the empire maybe trying to escape image. India's concerned development force like protecting Pakistan's nuclear weapons. Preemptive. India believes it has the capability of trying to strike. First, it believes Pakistan, of course, using weapons. But if Pakistan believes that, then of course Pakistan would have incentive to go first. Next off is that India, China turns to said relations are passable now, but China's expansionist tendencies fuel discord and mistrust. Letter 20 that dumping price service one of the intentions caused by competition by the rules on board can easily escalate. One did not resolve the underlying source of tension. Geostrategic development is continued expansion. Chinese BRI. There's increased tension between India and China, which is integrating all of South Asia. That China and India have not given up on the improved relationship with the alternative is dangerous deterioration of relations disputed. India war is also causing tension. And India IRMBs are key to deter China. Its NFU policy is a paper tiger that does not resolve the risk of nuclear escalation. Gauchulating that India IRMB has the capability of striking northern parts of China nuclear warheads. It is a deterrent against China's nuclear capabilities. China has kept the option open the option of using nuclear weapons first in a territory they consider no concerns. Remain the first use nuclear weapons in footage that which China considers to be a part of its territory. It is nuclear deterrence to be very critical enough to deter China from attacking Indian territory. Navy is a China-specific nuclear deterrent, which is a clear indication of China not to mess with India. And border clashes called Sino-Indian War goes nuclear, and NFU does not check cartridges at 17. China's been building a system road to into the for research part of China's expansion across centuries together with one belt, one road process, and is not including any territory or influence of China. Border clash could conceivably escalate to a nuclear war that China may consider use of nuclear weapons, notwithstanding their NFU policy. And even conventional war sucks, fuels an economic crisis, and domestic unrest. Music came in 19 war between two countries would involve second world defense and shots of global economy, punitive economic action, making sounds concede to enter exports forward the potential domains of China's savings out of war domestic unrest could become a major problem. War between India and China would be brutal, far-reaching consequence for the global economy. Next up is bioweapons. Disarmament causes a shift towards biological weapons, robust empirics, narrowing 16 we choose an empirical approach of observing historical patterns and state pursuits of different TVMDs. We found the underlying demand for NPC weapons appears to be correlated to many of the factors that cause states to go nuclear, influence the rest of the states will see biological weapons. Once states acquire nuclear weapons, they appear far less likely to pursue biological weapons as acquiring nuclear weapon appears to reduce the risk of biological weapons. Proves that achieving reductions of global nuclear stock will cause a rising chemical biological weapons proliferation. States view
as a poor means of atomic bomb only further reductions overall supply nuclear weapons constraint proliferation risk of biological weapons of other factions do not change anticipation of this. And Pakistan engages in bioweapons research with the intent of military usage. Assessment of Pakistan's involvement post-haste through signing of anti-bioweapons treaties show 14 scientific activity which appreciable portion related to PWZ are identified with this and a remarkable range of pathogens. Its involvement in BWRG research and production 1990. The US imposed sanctions on 4 Pakistani entities on suspicion that they could be involved in biological weapons activity. As I estimate Pakistan to be a country of greatest concern. The report on BW proliferation issued in 2000. Pakistan may see biological weapons as a way to counter Indian forces. There might be a temptation to use BW against enemies' front lines, and bioweapons are an existential risk. Tech advances ensure lethality and transmittability. Militant sniper be disseminated by weapons preventing human existence. These events have been responsible for the greatest deaths toll on humanity. There are historical examples of large human populations being almost entirely wiped out by disease. Many diseases are proof principles, and these exhibit nearly 100% case fatality ratio. Disease have a track record of spreading to virtually every human community. Advanced biotechnologies on viruses with enhanced transmissibility, lethality, ability to overcome therapeutics and bioweapon attacks outweigh lack of preparation and spread of disease. Guarantees more deaths. Pharmaceutical biochemists can kill millions of people and attack more deadly than nuclear war. National pandemics can push about nuclear weapons. You think they'll probably stop after killing 100 million smallpox will stop. There's no reparations. Then next off is spec interpretation. The AF must specify which specific nuclear arsenals they defend, eliminating into delineated text in the 1C violation. They didn't vote negative for stable ground. This has counterflow competition or contingent upon specific definitions, especially on top of zero unifying generics. Text is key. They don't have to spec. They can recalibrate their accuracy depending on the 1C force. They negative shoot a moving target, which kills fairness, education, or vote is a charge participation, reject the team, because reject the argument is severance, and competing interpretation says reasonability is arbitrary, but charge intervention, no RVIs is illogical one for being fair and encourages theory baiting. Next up, counterplay text the Republic of India and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan on to eliminate the nuclear submarines case. No station for nuclear war. Isolated island populations repopulate the earth after radiation and nuclear winter. Tertiary and green 18. The unshared properties which against specific danger pointed out. Survive pandemics. Aboriginal people survive in isolation. Produce earth consumed struggle for humans such as human life. Other earth be repopulated inhabitants of small central island are hostile and contacted when nuclear winter and cold iceland. When remains surrounded by war oceans, local volcanism, source of micro heat, energy, island refugees have left no survived during the snowballers. Island refugees could be strengthened with bunkers, but have higher survivability. And rumors of the climate's demise are greatly exaggerated. Robust simulations making worst case assumptions didn't produce a single nuclear winter. Rising all 18 other simulations are the nuclear one's explosion followed by simulation fireball cloud. 15 permanent studies are simulation fire spin suit transporter. Fire simulations educate the bulk of the carbon masses removed from the atmosphere for use realistic vertical profile for the BC long-term global impacts on climate are much less severe. This was treated with conservative worst case assumptions regarding BC production. Now the simulation proves the nuclear winter effect also responds to the indict of Reservoir 1 because it models firestorms far more realistically, even if it used suburbs instead of the exact locality of India and Pakistan. And it says that it utilized worst case assumptions like producing way more black carbon than would actually occur, which would offset any sort of disadvantage because it didn't use the right environment, and no risk of Indo-Pak war because of deterrence signal and Rajamar 18. Is there likelihood that India could launch a preemptive strike against Pakistan? I don't think there's a realistic possibility of coming to violence. It's more than no one in serious chance of nuclear strike. There's been no main lead attack by Pakistan-based terrorist. Pakistani intelligence appreciate that India would have to retaliate. Pakistani army posture done largely for domestic consumption. If push comes to shove, leadership in both countries are responsible. Zero risk of India-Pakistan conflict, deterrence strikes, escalation, recovery, and Guide 16. That India's increasing all nuclear weapons capabilities for security reasons unconnected with Pakistan. All the analysts focus on the Indo-Pakistani conflict. Pakistan is not supposed serious. Pakistan suffers economic stagnation, sectarian violence, dysfunctional governments. Pakistan are defensive. There's a likelihood Pakistan leads nuclear weapons to achieve leverage over India. That India terrorism stuff is the only solvency deficit to the pig. Couple of responses. One, they don't solve. Their evidence says that it's the theft of nuclear materials that is a problem. One, dismantling nuclear weapons would also produce things like fissile material that can be stolen by terrorists. There's also traditional nuclear power plants, which the AF has no game on, that would still facilitate things like stealing. And their evidence says that there have been countless incidents of uranium being stolen in the past. They have no explanation of what unique capabilities terrorists now have in the status quo that would facilitate a terrorist attack when countless examples prove it didn't happen earlier. And their evidence presumes crisis escalation based on nuclear possession. So the fact that if we eliminate the chance of India first striking because Pakistan no longer has nukes, there isn't any impact to Indian terrorism. The Kashmir stuff, their evidence describes the Kashmir conflict as long running. A pilot was shot down, airstrikes have occurred. They implemented the citizenship bill. Millions of military officials have been moved into Kashmir. If that didn't escalate the conflict, then nothing will. Worst case, it just means that the Kashmiri conflict buildup is sort of a slow, is something that would happen over a large time frame, which means things like development, negotiations, mediation, etc. would all solve, and also means bioweapons would outweigh on time frame and a bunch of mitigating factors solved. Hydra 16 hysteria jumped up by media experts will come in non-structural changes in military and nuclear weapons complex and defense rendered total war impossible. The domain is not asymmetric war, overlaying this globalization war between India and Pakistan. A lot of structural reasons will mitigate this. The India terrorism stuff is also responded to by all of the indicts. The Pakistan terrorism stuff is also responded to by all the indicts of Indian terrorism. The same arguments as to why fissile materials would still exist are also a reason why terrorists in Pakistan would still be able to escalate. The submarine stuff is solved by the submarine stuff is solved by the counterplay.
Status of the counterplans. The first one is condo, the other one's on condo.
Okay. Wait, how? Okay, sure. So I guess if India doesn't have nuclear weapons, how does US or Sino-Indian war go nuclear?
Wait, No, it's Pakistan doesn't have nuclear weapons.
No, but like your dissent.
Yeah.
AF eliminates Indian nuclear weapons.
Oh yeah, sure.
How
So
does that go
the
to-
claim is that China would aggress upon Indian land, and that despite China having an NFU policy on paper, it doesn't really apply in these sort of territorial disputes, and China would be the one to launch nukes.
But if India doesn't respond, what's the impact? Or is it just like China
China
launching nukes
first.
is bad?
China first use, yeah. China launching nukes is bad.
Okay.
And conventional war is bad too.
Sure. Why would, or so your Shoham evidence says that in the status quo, Pakistan intends to use bioweapons, and as the way to counter large Indian forces in the status quo, why, like, haven't they used bioweapons? Or I guess, why won't they use bioweapons in the status quo?
So a couple of things. I think this one begs the question of the Narang evidence. Even if there's existing research on bioweapons, which is the claim the evidence makes, a full-scale shift is what would precipitate them developing an actual arsenal that could then be utilized. And even if you win that there's a shift occurring now, the scale at which it would occur post-plan would be much larger. And I think the bioweapons impact evidence makes a claim that that sort of speed, investment, magnitude all matters in increasing the lethality of a disease, i.e. the kind of bioweapons.
Why would they want to develop bioweapons that kill everyone if that would kill their own people?
I don't know why it would kill their own people. I think the impact evidence actually.
Wait, so it doesn't cause extinction?
So it would launch an attack towards India that might then spread outwards.
How would that spread?
I mean, I guess, okay, I guess I see your question. If your question is like, why would they launch weapons that would also eliminate them? I think that would also answer the AF scenarios, because India-Pakistan nuclear war is an instance of Pakistan first striking, potentially risking their own civilization, so.
Sure. The China dissent, I guess, where is your evidence? Like, I guess, if China has nukes, why wouldn't India just surrender if they don't have nukes?
So the claim being made is that China would be the one the first to use.
Why? Like, if India doesn't have nukes, why would India use them? Like,
Because
it's
the
like a
scenario
conventional
is
war.
not China threatening to use nuclear weapons in order to garner territorial, in order to garner more territory. The scenario is China and India clashing over territory. In the status quo, there no longer being a deterrent, which pushes China to use nuclear weapons. And India is obviously unlikely to surrender in a conventional scenario.
Okay, I'll start correct. What are the net benefits? Are there any net benefits to the Pakistan pick besides the China dissent?
No. Or I guess bioweapons is also net benefit.
The counterplan eliminates Pakistani bioweapons.
No, it just eliminates their nuclear arsenal.
Or, I mean, wait, so what's the link to bioweapons if it's
That they
not?
would shift to bioweapons to make up that deficit.
Yeah, so how does the counterplan not link to that? The counterplan
Oh,
is
I
Pakistan.
see. No, you're right. Okay, right.
Okay, 59 seconds left. Spec case, Pakistan pick the submarines counterpoint the China disset bioweapons disset.
What sort of the counterpoints again?
The Pakistan pick, then the
Submarines.
submarines counterpoint. Okay, Spec chase.
Pakistan
Famous.
pick then yeah. Pakistan pick then submarines.
Yeah.
Everyone ready?
I didn't, oh, I did the wrong one. One sec. Yeah, no.
Everyone good?
Counter-information after announced to specify beyond the resolution first arbitrary specs uncritical include aggressive no resolutional basis. You reading normal means evidence checks and you craft definition to reading the one and see when you read a link to a disset which is better fancy from arbitrarily specifying a definition of disadvantage negative third where you eliminate all articles. The case counterforce capability creates use or lose pressures on Pakistan because they want to use their nuclear weapons before India is able to attack them. Pre-delegation of tactical nuclear weapons to the paranoid battlefield commanders makes the risk of escalation high and India overconfident triggers it because they think they have counterforce capability before they actually do that. Limelight will concede nuclear war doesn't kill literally everyone. They can still concede it immediately kills 125 million people in 1 week, and the reverberating effects would still end up killing billions of people, which will win outweighs the disset on probability and time frame. Deterrence doesn't check. Counterforce makes it rational to use nukes first, which was the stuff at the top. None of their evidence assumes it's about historical crisis, which doesn't account for new technology. Not going for nuclear terror. The counterplan or the pick. Picks are voting machine moved off often with mining policy changes, shifting based from the core literature towards its margins, undermining both topic-specific education and strategic options. Dissets solve their offense. Doesn't solve the case. 8 point. India would still use nukes against Pakistan in a conventional conflict. Modi is extremely nationalist and has said that it's considered defense, which means even if Pakistan doesn't have nuclear weapons, Modi would still want to use nuclear weapons on them, which would still be used against cities like Islamabad, which would still kill millions of people. B point. It links to the net benefit. India would just invade Pakistan, causing conventional war, which was the Modi nationalism stuff above, which proves conventional war is inevitable in both worlds, and any risk of Islamic State it's sufficient to outweigh, which means you can cross by their disset evidence. The submarines counterplan conditionalities voting due for strategy splits one over forcing to argue with multiple worlds to defend unique use conditions, which moves take advantage of strategic interactions and concentration. Second is class incentivizes creating many short accuracy to police coverage, which means sorry responsibility, hearing adaptive positions, nuances, always use external education, multi round solve their education impacts, but clash only occurs in round third dispo solves they can kick it. If we make a permutation allows sufficient negative flexibility for serving one error strategic decision making. It also links to the China disset because if India is perceived as getting rid of their submarines, that also means that China would perceive them as scaling back their nuclear forces, which would mean China would perceive that they would have the ability to invade because it seems like India is scaling back their nuclear deterrent. The China disset at top level, it doesn't assume India disarming. India would obviously just concede in a conventional conflict because they know that China would absolutely Shrek them because China has nuclear weapons, which means it would never get to nuclear use in the first place. Their evidence doesn't assume this, which means you should err heavily affirmative on the case at wing. There's no terminal impact to conventional war. Their evidence just lists a bunch of stuff like economic decline, but doesn't impact that out. The 2 hours too late for that because it determines one error strategy. Recent Indian test failures mean deterrence fails. This connects to their sort of weapon system they're talking about that something else. 19 credibility is highly dependent countries' capabilities failed. Test of Agni 3 races test with reliability robust. India's deterrent that submarine derivative Agni 3 to put on nuclear stuff. Failure might send a signal to Pakistan and China that India's arsenal isn't reliable and bullying them to push the envelope during the crisis. The adversary might find it attractive to use conventional weapons that escalated for strike without fear. Retaliation, the bioweapons just said no internal link. There's no incentive to develop large-scale pandemics that could kill everyone on the planet because they want localized pathogens that don't affect their own citizens. They need evidence that connects their internal link to the impact. Their CX explanation was that it applies equally to the app. I'll explain why it doesn't, and that means they don't get neutron or explanation. 8 point. Nuclear war doesn't cause extinction. That was stuff conceded on the case. B point. Our scenario is one in which the countries don't think it would escalate, but their dissent is obviously about scientifically managed pathogens, and they wouldn't just intentionally create a pathogen that could kill literally everyone. And even if they submitted that is such low probability, not substantiated by any of their evidence, it is not specific to Pakistan that it cannot weigh the case. Their evidence says Pakistan currently wants to use bioweapons in a conventional conflict, which non-unique to dissent. There's no threshold for their link argument. It's rats for the link. Narang agrees he's wrong. The strength 16 account know the impact of nuclear reductions on CBW. Historical patterns may be less economic analysis. Not to consider conventional forces in terms of parts such that have little no empirical part of the parts not for definitive answers. One producer must be done and intended consequences are highly relevant. Individual findings only follow under specific assumptions also means you should err after insofar as they don't have evidence specifically about Pakistan having the incentive to scale up their bioweapons program. No bioweapons impact that reveals 17 complex frequency to compare contagious agents or proliferation one after social factors counter is access to data age 9 information not the test knowledge and hard to see because but only gets so far with culture sealing up optimization requiring considerable interdisciplinary skills. They don't have evidence that Pakistan has the capability to create these giant pathogens, which means even if it's hypothetically possible, which like everyone around the world and the best scientists, that doesn't mean that Pakistan alone would be able to do it or have an incentive to use it.
Yeah.
248. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, it was just kind of in pigs.
No RBI.
Alright, oops. It's just at the top. Is it standing?
Yeah.
I have not received it yet.
Pakistan pick, like the theory stuff, subs, condo, and then bioweapons.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
It's the picks, condo, bioweapons.
Okay, not like the counterpoints proper. The counterpoints proper?
No,
it's just
theory.
theory. Yeah. So theory, bioweapons case. Yeah. Cool.
Alright, so
1 second. Yeah, go ahead.
alright, sounds good.
Kick the Pakistan pick. I'm not going for the pick stuff here. Counter-interpretation that can read a counterpoint that mandates the plan with specific exceptions. Picks are good. One, fairness. That gives infinite prep time, the capacity to parametricize the resolution, then being able to test individual components of the one you see is necessary to check. Second is depth, focusing on the intricacies of the app, facilitates debates that are fleshed out and comparative always, because it's the only internal link to cultivating critical thinking or top-running. Three, decision-making research skills compared to a marginally different course of action along with day-to-day interactions, and forces the app to research the plan more thoroughly, always because they're portable skills that apply to every facet of our lives. The ground stuff. One, they can still generate offense where assaults to deficit, not having a generic block to any exceptions, whether it means they either wrote a terrible app or didn't prepare sufficiently. Second, it's offense where the counter proves incentivize more robust preparation, which is internal to everything from topic education to better debates and solves their offense. They say just the disad being the net benefit by itself is not enough. One is still only to depth offense because the app can circumvent the nuances of the disad and one in case outweighs and shallow defense every round. Second, doesn't shrink the afterward that rectifies their inherent strategic advantage, means it does solve the fairness offense. That predictability stuff, the net benefit to the pick exists either way, means that the unpreparedness that prevents them from turning it is inevitable. There's only risks that are insured maintain some level of depth. And second, competition in airplanes all guarantee predictability. Picks are contingent on whatever disads exist in a small subset of the calculation that the app itself gets to decide.
The condo stuff kicks the subs counter, I'm not going for it.
Counter-interpretation, the negative may read one conditional advocacy set standards, one neg flex staff has infinite amount of prep time for the round line for hyper-specific and strategic cases, while I only have 4 minutes to adapt. Additionally, in-round flexibility is key to checking advantage and ensuring they have the first and last speech and set the ground debate, ensuring negative conditionality is key to fairness through checking out by. Second is argument innovation. Debaters are risk-averse, lower barriers to argument entry via condo, encourages more unique arguments, is key to argument generation, and argument innovation outweighs argument quality in round because it stretches our perception as opposed to using recycled arguments. And 3 also destroys negative strategies since the output front and the plan against the few most common arguments whenever it runs the negative strategy would become incredibly predictable. Skip that card, the strats key stuff. One, the neg lives an equivalent part of the one you see when we kick half for a strategy, so as long as the app covers each equally, condo has 0 impact on fairness, which makes it reciprocal. Third, turn the applicants perms that are functionally conditional applications to have to prove they're less desirable than my advocacy alone. Multiple perms means they get unlimited strategic flexibility to test the app from counterpoint from several angles, so condo's key to test the app in the same way, key to reciprocity, which always because it's a definition of fairness. The clash stuff. One, collapse to information overload on the skip that. The fairness defense, the fact we are both forced to collapse in condo means we outweigh in specific education. Second, the alternative to the negative strategy is replacing one advocacy with another opposition, which means clash is evened out and out of round education outweighs, which means our argument innovation argues come first.
The bioweapons disad.
Pakistan removal of nukes fosters a shift towards bioweapons. They need something that replaces the deficit caused by the loss of their sole weapon of mass destruction, and bioweapons fill that deficit as a sort of distinct deterrent. The Narang evidence here it's a piece of empirics citing the cross elasticity and how that applies to WMDs. The argument is that empirically, when countries garner nuclear weapons, the risk of them acquiring biological weapons is substantially reduced. This would also apply to Pakistan. There are arguments about how Narang says that his inferences are unlikely. One, they're right that Narang says you should use caution, but the explanation of why he says that does not apply to this affirmative. Narang's arguments are that things like conventions that stop biological weapons would likely occur would likely occur as the result of other countries eliminating nuclear arsenals. But the only distinction between the SPLO and the world of the plan is the removal of nuclear arsenals. The plan does not fiat things like conventions, and even if they did, these conventions fail. Circumvention to a terrible verification mechanism, ambiguous wording, and lack of infrastructure. 1919, the interest in block verification across the by evidence countries through centralized BWC may still be reserved by weapons that by BWC is considered to be toothless and effective at creating focus of our weapons conflicts being single active participation language conventions open to various tradition conventions enough infrastructure that BWC support unit consists of 3 people. And Narang is explicit in saying that insofar as these factors would not occur, things like conventions don't sort of emerge post-plan. His inferences are likely correct. Second, it's comparative. Even if Narang is a little bit suspect, it's the only piece of empirics read on the round. The app's sort of spin as to why Pakistan does not have bioweapon capabilities are obviously wrong as per the second piece of evidence that I'll get to later, so you should err heavily negative, even if Narang isn't perfect. Third, even if they're right that Narang is a little bit sketchy. The implication that Narang makes is that there should be evidence specific to individual countries that would ensure his empirics are correct. That when a C meets that threshold, it cites evidence of countless intelligence briefs that stating that Pakistan has bioweapons capabilities, which answers their argument that Pakistan doesn't have the infrastructure now. My evidence is better. It cites various bioweapon centers that have been sanctioned by the United States in the past due to various studies they did into developing biological weapons, which proves that Pakistan has both the knowledge and the motive to do so. The impact of bioweapons massively outweighs. They conceded that nuclear war does not lead to extinction and conceded that bioweapons does. Existential risk should outweigh loss of infinite future generations means it's magnitudely far larger and outweighs on scope. The nuclear exchange is localized at best, and no nuclear winter means it doesn't spread globally, whereas the argument is that bioweapons, due to increased transmittability fueled by new technological advances, bioweapons would spiral outward. Their arguments about the shift anyway stuff. One, the Narang evidence answers why Pakistan isn't shifting now. Nuclear weapons are a buffer. They have to win link defense to Narang for this argument to matter. Second, TNWs explain why Pakistan is not shifting to bioweapons now. Their argument in CX, as I understand it, is that tactical nuclear weapons are what Pakistan uses to deter conventional aggression that would not occur in a world where Pakistan doesn't have nuclear arsenals, which is what fuels the shift. Third, magnitude matters. Even if they win, there's a shift now. The impact evidence frames bioweapons through technological upgrades. The more investment and focus Pakistan has on shifting towards biological weapons, the more their lethality, the increase in transmissibility and its ability to kill everyone, which means that the magnitude of the shift and the increased research it would fuel. It definitely matters. Their last argument about why Pakistan wouldn't want to use biological weapons. All of their explanation as to why a nuclear war would escalate, India would use counterforce capabilities, or Pakistan would first strike, also explains why Pakistan would want to use biological weapons. That is a sort of theory of brinkmanship and escalation. The notion that a country might potentially use a weapon of mass destruction, knowing that it risks catastrophic decline. Their arguments as to why it doesn't apply to nuclear weapons are absurd. Sure, it doesn't lead to extinction, but their argument is that it kills 125 million people, including Pakistani society, and their only warrant as to why Pakistan wouldn't launch biological weapons is that it would obliterate their society as well. So it's not just a question of extinction, but whether or not Pakistani society survives. Also, India's uniquely susceptible, poor healthcare, frequent migration, more negative in Indonesia. Weak healthcare system, there's lots of migration of people, lack of hygiene, higher population density, also contributes faster spread disease. There's two implications to this. One, it means that Pakistan might miscalculate. They'll think that their biological weapon is only limited to India, but due to factors like poor healthcare, it spreads outward unintended, and it proves that if they think there will be escalation, they would rather utilize an attack that would.
Oh yeah, it didn't go off. My bad.
There we go. I had 59 left. What was the answer to the reveal evidence?
Oh, just that new tech upgrade itself.
What was the counter trip on Conda?
And then gets one conditional efficacy. Okay.
Okay, sorry, Natasha, Conda. Who has the message? Everyone good?
Yeah. Conditionality is a voting issue. First is argument development. It destroys alpha negative incentives for argument development. Their model encourages nonsense, no risk options. The one and C take them, which destroys argument responsibility, decreases the educational value of debates. They expand debates horizontally but not vertically, which matters because it links every argument they go for. Second is clash. Their model debate destroys incentives for high quality clash and testing, splitting in already constrained one Air Force debaters into short analytics instead of third debates means negatives for the argument with the least instead of their best arguments, which means we never get deep into core debates literature. Third, dispositionality solved was not answered. Our interpretation of dispositionality in the one where they can capably make a permutation that links strategic thinking and all of their offense means the affirmative has to make strategic choices about what will straight turn, what will make a permutation on, and means the negative has to think strategically about how they can force the affirmative to make a permutation, or whether or not they're willing to risk it, or what they're even going to put in the 1C instead of being able to throw nonsense service offense. It sufficiently solves negative flexibility enough, and it solves the majority of their real world offense. It still allows them to test the out from multiple angles. Our offense is specific to LD. Their model debate doesn't let clash happen until the 2 which is fine, and policy makes no sense in LD since the rounds are half as long. They have much shorter speeches. The top level framing issues, they violate their counter interpretation. They said they take the subs counterplane in the 2NR, but it was unconditional. As per CX, the only conditional counterplane was the first pick. Competing interpretations is the framework you should use because they set that up on the spec offense in the 1C, which means they straight up don't have a counter interpretation that they meet, which means you can auto-affirmative on the risk of offense, but even if you don't, it means you should stick them with infinite conditionality, which means we should outweigh the logical conclusion of their offense. Their arguments negative flexibility. They already have sufficient flexibility via dispositionality. LD means they have 7/460 times. It means they have the ability to spread the affirmative out in a variety of different positions. They're able to read. There's no way they're necessarily able to do it. We didn't read new advantages in this debate, and they should be able to prepare it. Even if we have first and last speech, we don't never get the opportunity to sort of deploy our research that we used when they have conditionality. These incentivized to just make quick analytics, which is proven in this debate by the fact that we only were able to make analytic solvency deficits to each counterplane and couldn't even answer the subs counterplane. The argument is solved by dissets, which is a framing issue that they've conceded out of the 1C and just did not answer. The PIC's arguments on that page didn't answer because that was in the context of depth, but dissets still allow them to go in depth and test the app from a variety of angles. Multiple rounds also solves argument innovation because you can test the affirmative in a variety of different rounds, which also was in the 1 error and was not answered. It doesn't destroy neg strategy because at frontline it is now, it's just a question of whether or not we're able to clash upon it. The strategies here arguments, we're going for a clash offense, which means it doesn't apply. They don't lose an equivalent part of the 1C because the 1C is much larger, which means it doesn't count for the time disparity. And LD permutations is solved by dispositionality because you can take if we make your permutation, which links their offense, but also testing competition, not accuracy, so it doesn't apply infinite. Prep was above. The dissets aren't as bad because we can straight turn a disset, which proves its most dispositionality is also most logical, which link turns their offense is a net benefit to our interpretation, which is net benefit to our interpretation. The answers to clash just were insufficient. They were all answered above. Clash doesn't even out because this is just all the defense from other stuff. Around education does now. They conceded clash is the only mechanism for deploying that education within individual debates, which means there's only a risk of their offense. That around education is inevitable because people will inevitably research positions. It's just a question of whether or not that research should deploy a bunch of terrible nonsense counterplanes in the 1C, or whether the negative should defend a counterplane that they actually have to think about and be argumentatively responsible for.